Welcome, everybody. I'm Bruce Altmann. I've got Brian Walters online, another part of the team here. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Ed. Welcome, everybody in the room. Welcome, everybody online. Okay, we're going to talk about, we're working on a SCADA system for an oil and gas company in Midland, specifically the gas part. Okay. Oil and gas in a nutshell. You drill a hole, you frack the hole, oil and gas starts to come out, it slowly starts to not come out. So you take the gas, you compress it, you inject it back into the well. They actually call it gas lift. You get more oil and gas out. And whatever gas is left over from that, you sell. Talking about $2 million a day, somewhere in that range. So the next step is some terms you're going to hear. SCADA, everybody's room is probably familiar with SCADA, software control data acquisition. You're going to hear the word tag a lot. Tag is nothing but a data point. It could be any data point. A pressure, a temperature, a flow, the firmware for the controller. It could be anything. It's just a data point. That's all it is. You'll hear it quite a bit. So what are the devices that we have out in the field? Well, we use something called ABB Totalflow flow computer. It's a really fancy name for we need a really good gas meter that can tell you how much gas went by in a day, how much gas went by in an hour, and all the different things that go into those devices. The other devices we use are PLCs. A PLC is a fancy name for something with an IP address that can measure some voltage. If you haven't heard those terms before, that's what they are. So the next question is, why make the change? Why did this company say, let's spend all the time and energy changing out their SCADA system? They had one. They actually have 4, and probably some more I don't know about. The one that they had was basically running on cellular radios and Modbus serial. The problem was it would take about 30 minutes to get an update. 30 minutes is a pretty long time if something blows up. So that was the problem. The next big problem was their existing network really wasn't. And they want to do like, we might need to add 100 or more devices. We want to put cameras and video on the network. That wasn't going to fly. The network was the key piece that needed to be upgraded. So you've seen these devices in the field, and you're saying, Bruce, is this it? Are these the only devices? No, here's the business end of it. That's the business end of one compressor. And that's me out in Midland. So there's a row of those. So when we say compressor, that's what we're talking about. Okay, so those are the pieces, those are the parts. There was the why. Now we're going to kind of get into the design. And for the first piece of the design, it was all about the network. So I'm going to let Brian jump in here, talk about some of the design pieces for the network.
We are working with some information that if you're part of the program, you should be in it. But if you're not, I don't need to give you attack vectors. But let me tell you what we did. We looked at what they had, and we saw that they were using some old 2.4 gigahertz wireless radios, and they could not handle they couldn't handle even moving across simple video streams. It would kill the network. And like Bruce said, if they needed to poll a device, it took 30 minutes to get the information back. That just was not acceptable. So we looked at what was available and what fit into the tolerance of price expenditure. And so we did not go with low RAN. We did not go with 5G. We avoided all the cellular network garbage. Well, we tried that for a brief bit. It epically failed. Just tip, if you're going to do 5G in Midland, find something else. It is so oversubscribed. But anyway, so what we did do is we used a private type 5 gigahertz radio. Really, what is used by a lot of the wireless internet providers around the country. So we went with Cambian Networks to make the deployment. Part of that was a supply chain issue. You'll hear this a lot. You've heard this for the last several years. Supply chain, supply chain, supply chain. And so that's why we picked the hardware we did, is because Cambian actually had their products in stock and we could get them within, a few weeks to a month. As much of it as possible, I chose to go open source because that's what I do. When I deploy and design a network, I use as much open source products as I can. because I can pull those things together in a homogeneous monitoring system that is very nice. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Now, power was a real interesting challenge. And probably this has been the most challenge I've had of any site, because my background really comes in data centers and long haul type circuits like that. However, in this case, a lot of our remote sites, what we call pad sites, where those big compressors are, those tend to be, believe it or not, where there's no power. Power, not internet connectivity, power was the big problem we had out at these pad sites. Even though you got these big monster compressors that are 4 or 5 times bigger than Bruce, most of the power that we have, that we run off of, is solar. So we would have, charging in the day, run off batteries at night. And so that created some real challenges for monitoring that. And some of those we still struggle with today, but that's always a fun and exciting thing to do. Security model. Let's talk about this. Because I don't have a nice diagram to show you, but what we did do is we took the security and we broke it out. If you have to actually be involved with the SCADA, with the MQTT traffic that Bruce will talk about later, if you happen to need access to that and you have a business role for that, then we put you in it. Otherwise, we isolate you out. So like just average business daily work, they're pushed out into a separate place. Now, the beauty about this, because of the way we isolated it out, we also put hotspots into some of the key locations on these pad sites, because in the middle of the summer in Midland, it's easily 110, 115 degrees. Nobody wants to get out there and mess with a computer. Likewise, in the wintertime, you got, below freezing temps. So I took a tip from one of my previous experiences where we worked in South Dakota. And I said, hey, let's make sure these guys can actually roll up on a pad in their truck, and they can hit a private Wi-Fi that's secure. And in the event that they can't, they can actually hit the mobile VPN in their truck and they can come in that way. So these guys can stay out of the environment, but yet go there and make changes to compressors, pumps, take readings of whatever they might need to do tuning, because they actually use this equipment while they're tuning. So that in a nutshell is kind of everything that I've done. I'm happy to take questions at the end because I'm not going to be there at the bar. But Bruce, if you've got the technology back under command, you can have it back.
So let's talk about the design. That's kind of the next piece is, okay, so if you're going to do SCADA, got all these devices out in the field, they're reading gas and all these different sensors. We went with a full failover design edge hub and spoke. And this is, I grabbed the picture from Ignition. We used Ignition as the SCADA system. They're the 800-pound gorilla in the space. You got the ABB, you have to go buy the little driver to talk to the ABB box. We went with that edge gateway. And the whole idea of this whole picture is real simple. If the radio tower falls down, if the main gateway goes down, if the link to the internet goes down, if anything goes down, you get in the truck, you drive out to the edge gateway, you log in, you get all the screens and all the data for all the devices that are connected. So worst comes to worst, you're sitting in your truck in the rain, Wi-Fi'd into the local edge gateway and do whatever you need to do.
How many days would it catch data?
It depends how you set it up, but pretty much infinite depending on your RAM and your disk. So I designed it for
Is gateway yours, or is it AWS or Azure?
the edge gateway is actually a little fanless Linux box running out in the field, running Ignition Edge Gateway.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily use a hyperscaler for a SCADA network.
The main gateway in this picture is sitting on Azure.
Really?
It's Ignition sitting on Azure in the cloud, and it has a backup server that is just replicated automatically as part of what Ignition does.
What's the transport?
So this is the, if you did it the Ignition way, this is the picture before MQTT. Let's talk about that for a second. So the next decision we made is, okay, you can kind of do Ignition out of the box with ABBs. There's a protocol, or it's really a message bus is what it really is, called MQTT. This is what it is. If you've not played with it, It's just a message bus. You have to go buy it. You have to install it. What it really meant for us is we need something that handles short bytes of information over a really crappy network. And that's what this was designed to do. The other side benefit was these ABBs, while reading, being a very fancy gas meter and doing the daily records, there's one more piece. If they take that daily record and they put a digital signature on it, that's now auditable. And why you care about that at all is that's called an EFX record, and that's how much gas went through that meter, and that's where the check gets cut. So
Is that important?
that's a very important piece. Yeah, that piece is important.
How many meters are in the network?
100 now, and I've got another 100 coming.
Just 200 meters.
This customer likes to do one box per meter to
Okay,
limit the
so-
failover. You can put more than one in a box.
What's the geographic land territory?
It's the south side of Midland. Yeah.
So what is the most sensitive part, operational standpoint? What if I can, you can see, is it getting data, what are some of the things that are critical?
From my point of view, from the, Brian's got the network set up and the security model set up, and it just works. Okay. We're going to talk a little bit more about the monitoring, which Brian set up, which is also just fantastic. From the SCADA point, it's real simple, the use model. They're waiting for an alarm. They're busy installing new things, fixing things, thinking about the next thing. So they're kind of like you and me until they get an alarm, right? And then they want to go see what's wrong, do charts and graphs. So all they want is good information. They don't care how it gets there. Just get me the good information. Present it to me in a way I want to do. So to me, the network, as long as it catches back up in the next hour, we're fine. I can live with it with a spotty network.
How large are the packets?
They're tiny.
Like
Yeah.
5 bytes, like 50 bytes?
Oh, I'd have
100?
I'd have to fire up the browser and show you the data and command packets. They're not big.
Okay, so the reason I asked the question is from a network perspective, you're only covering like Midland. Did you guys consider putting a private network in like Laurel?
We talked about it. It wasn't the best solution for us. Brian can talk about it more afterwards, but yeah.
This is very cost effective.
Yeah.
There is the lower WAN supplier in that
Yeah.
has a network installed.
We looked at a lot of the options.
Private radios are cheap.
There's a lot of noise.
There is,
There's a ton of noise.
frequency you're
Yeah. So we decided to go point to point. And other than the one that's the airport that has some challenges, it works really well. It works really well.
You said you used what Cambian system did you use?
Can we turn Brian back on?
You can.
Yeah, I can turn. I can turn back on. Which Cambian system do we use? We use the EPMPs and the SMs that go along with them.
Okay, back to the design. So this is the design when you plug MQTT back into the SCADA system. You still got the edge gateway. You basically put an MQTT module on it to do send and receive. On the main gateway, you put on a distributor. You just have to have one of those to have MQTT network. You put on something called the MQTT engine, which basically translates from MQTT to Ignition. That's where the tags live as far as the main gateway goes. Then they have this real handy thing called MQTT recorder, which is, hey, take those daily records and put them in SQL, please, so I can do the data report. What that really means is now I have MQTT in the middle. The whole Ignition way of doing networking is gone. It's all MQTT. There is nothing else. MQTT, the module that comes for Ignition, is made by a company called CirrusLink. And the ABB driver that for Ignition is also made by a company called CirrusLink. The main key takeaway from this picture is, hey, those SQL daily records are now flowing into SQL. That's what I care about. The rest of it, it's all set up stuff for SCADA.
So are you just running like either some MQTT client on your backup server and subscribing to all the topics and caching them? Is that what I'm saying or not?
Subscribing all. Ask me again.
So you're running, from this picture, it's a little hard to see because it's so small. That's why I'm
Yeah,
asking.
sorry.
You're running MQTT on the edge, and then your piece in the middle looks like you're intercepting the MQTT, i.e. subscribing or doing something to intercept the MQTT and stash it in SQL. Is that what I'm
Yeah, the ABB creates this daily records. It's got tags. Hey, what's the pressure? What's the temperature? And it has these daily records, they're actually a record. It's a CSV file. Right? That's what it is. It gets created out here in ABB. It gets put on this box. MQTT goes, oh, you've got daily records. It sends it up here to this recorder, and that recorder goes, what do you want me to do? Oh, you want me to put the SQL table for this month.
Okay.
Pretty much that straightforward.
But if you lose connectivity, you're caching them?
MQTT has its own store and forward mechanism, which is a little different than Ignition.
I didn't know if you were caching it or just relying on the MQTT to cache and save.
If you don't use MQTT, Ignition has its own store and forward. We threw that out and said, no, we're going to MQTT.
Okay.
We use their
That's
store
what I
and
wanted to
forward.
clarify.
You can either put in RAM or put in disk.
Okay. So
The
it is
trade-off
under-
being if the power goes off and it's in RAM,
So it is.
So
under-
it'll too bad.
Yeah, okay.
It's
then
gone.
in that case.
Yeah, we tested that quite a few times because that's important to us.
And it's small, so you can do a lot.
Yeah, what it's really doing is the tag updates instantly. You just take the history and go, hey, history provider, here's the history you missed. Takes a few minutes. It works pretty
So are you monitoring just on and off of the compressor? I see you have the whole things there. What are you monitoring actually that's coming as far as the crude? Is it the quality of the gas, wetness? Do you know before they put it in the pipeline? That's the
everything.
reason I'm asking that question.
Yeah, everything. The ABB actually does spectral analysis, breakdown analysis. I'm not going to tell you they use it,
Okay.
but I'm telling you it's there. So we're going to get to what they see and kind of how this is, infrastructure diagram. So bear with me and ask me
Okay.
again.
I mean, the PLC, whatever the PLC will shoot out, right?
Okay. And the last piece of the design, Brian, if you're still there, talk to them about the monitoring because I love the monitoring you set up for this. No joke.
Okay. All right. I am still here. Hopefully you guys can still hear me.
Yes.
So what we did, if you reach out to Ignition is going to tell you that they can monitor, they can alert, they can tell you everything. But what happens when Ignition goes down? So what we do is we actually have a double layer of monitoring. All of the important production equipment, all of the devices Bruce has talked about, all the ABB Totalflows and all that, they get monitored in Ignition. And then outside of that, we take more of a traditional data center, data network type approach, and we monitor all of the radios. We monitor all of the switches. We monitor all the infrastructure that moves the packets throughout the network. We monitor those with a tool called Ixia, which is, again, an open source product. It has its origins from Nagios. If any of you know what Nagios is, Ixia is a fork and a rewrite of that. Nice part about it is it can be API driven. So there's the capability to do a full integration. When you bring a device online, you can have it update the DNS. You can have it update the Ixia. You can also have it drive to a config collector like Rancid. So everything is all pulled together. So we watch Ignition, and Ignition watches all of the production equipment, as well as we also watch the oil and gas production equipment. So by doing it that way, we have double layers of monitoring. We know when something burps in this network, and we have escalation paths in place. And that's the other thing with Ixia. We escalate. So like if it's a piece of field equipment, we've got certain alerts that go out to certain people. But if it's a network thing, it immediately escalates to a higher group. That's usually when I get called, or I see a text, or I see an email. So yeah, that's how our monitoring works.
Yeah. Can Brian hear us?
Yeah.
Can you hear me, Brian?
Yes, I can. I can hear him asking that.
Sorry, I didn't catch it.
It runs on your own hardware, is it switch of the x86 Linux system? Not a question.
The stuff in the field is Ubuntu Linux that we install, our hardware that we bought. And Ignition Edge runs on that. You license it and it runs on that.
Ignition runs on all
Chris,
that.
it's working.
Ignition runs on that.
What happens if ignition goes down?
I get a notice from the Ixia saying, hey, something's wrong with the Ignition JVM. I pay attention to those.
But if it's down, it doesn't really matter as long as the data's cached, but really, what he's really worried about is billing.
Now, if the edge goes down, then I'm not caching anything because the edge is down. Yeah. I can catch up some of it, like the data records, but the tag flow just, well, okay, the thing that records the tag flow isn't there.
But let me ask you this question.
There's a way.
Do you get the start and stop values? So if you've been interrupting, can you get out and extrapolate what they have? So let's say, you had this many cubic feet of gas and then it stopped. And now you're at this many cubic feet of gas and I can actually reconstruct.
Well, the nice thing about the ABB is it keeps track over the day. So as long as you get to it, and I think it's
So you can kind of figure it
3 or
out.
4 days and go, well, yeah, give me that daily record. I missed it.
Yeah, you can figure it out.
Give me the FX record. I missed it. Yeah. You can set it to however much money you want to spend. They're not the cheapest things in the world, like $4,000 a pop. So for a
So
basic
you're
one.
only measuring flow, you're not actually turning on or off any valves to specific pipelines.
We do have some slam valves that are controlled. We do have some set points for oxygen kickover that are controlled. So yeah, it's not all read only. There are a few, hey, I need to turn this off right now. I can't drive out there in the truck.
Follow-up question to that then is security. Because that's been the issue of switching from SCADA systems, is they have lousy security, but most of the IoT systems have their own security issues. It's just a different, so it's one set of problems.
Well, yeah, because most SCADA systems are closed loop. That's why people put in most of the historically SCADA systems.
Our design was, and Brian drove this, this is our network and our VPN. Here are the ways in. And once you're in, you're in. You still have to log into things. But I won't tell you where the vulnerabilities are because that would be not good of me to do. But that was the design. We're putting everything inside the wall. It doesn't go out. You can, reach outside and get what you need, but you can't connect unless you come to one of our VPNs. Yes, sir.
Are you able to collect historical data from the things being monitored, then use that to predict problems, predictive maintenance, and stuff?
That's an excellent question, near and dear to my heart. So Ignition comes with history out of the box. You just turn it on and say how much and how fast, right? You want to do it once a day, once a minute, once an hour, those kinds of things. That's a feature of Ignition. To then take that and do anomaly detection, right? It's a basic machine learning. This customer hasn't done that. Other customers are interested. I talked to them about their compressors, said, hey, let's do some of that. That SCADA data is owned by the other vendor running the compressors, so maybe. It's very doable, but we haven't done it yet.
So they have a lot of historical data they can use for training, essentially.
They have a lot of historical data. I'll show you the screen here in a second. When you click on the tag, you automatically get the history. And that's what they use to figure out what the heck is going on. But it's pretty straightforward. Yeah. I got an alarm. What the heck is going on? Okay, what am I going to do? Okay, now back to the other well. I have to go, the new wells and the new pads and everything else I have to do. Okay. Let me jump back over here real quick.
So the cool monitoring system.
I like it. I mean, we're just like they are. They get an alarm, they go do stuff. We get a single alert, we go do stuff. Otherwise, back to other stuff I have to do.
But you guys really want to be in the alarm monitoring business.
That's not what I want to do. No, I want to be in the model and, hey, let's talk about production and let's talk about anomaly detection and those kinds of things.
They want to be in the monitoring business. It's their network.
So let's talk about the journey. Let's talk about what really happened. I'll skip a few things to protect the innocent, but so Ignition was selected, MQTT was selected, the network decision was made, those things got started.
What was the network decision? Could you give us like a 30-second summary?
Yeah, unfortunately, that was the part Brian talked about, but yeah, we're going to go with this design. We're going to go with Cambian. We're going to go with this, VPN design. We're going to go with this security model for that.
With cellular?
No, we have our own radios. It's all point to point.
No, wait, that's Cambian.
Yeah.
5 heroes.
Yeah.
Point to multipoint.
Yeah, it's point to multipoint. Yeah.
Why Cambian?
It was available. It's off the shelf.
I'll let Brian answer that one.
There's
Brian?
one's off the shelf.
Yes. Okay. So
Heroes.
yes, it was off the shelf equipment because it was available. Their equipment also meets the, what's that, C1D2 requirement that so much of our equipment has to meet. So That's why we developed it the way we did. This is not a big enough project to get into a lot of customized radio equipment, a lot of super high end, printed circuit board level custom design builds. I love doing that kind of work, but that's not what this customer was willing to pay for. So we used off the shelf equipment, and we have some pretty unique ways of keeping things secure.
Did you look at anything else besides Cambian?
Oh, I also looked at Ubiquity at the same time because they were a good front runner. They had some stuff in the same frequency ranges, and we had previous experience down in Louisiana pushing something over 60 miles with the Gulf, and that worked very well and very reliably. But the problem with Ubiquity, when we started this project, they were 6 to 8 months out on delivery of some of our key parts. Cambian could deliver it in less than 2 months.
There's also like Radware, Airspan, and Telrad.
There are and I don't think you mentioned Red Lion. There's a number of radios and network gear out there that we looked at, and honestly, a lot of it was a cost factor. They were like, "This is way too far." You got to understand where these guys came from. They came from the home version of Ubiquity, and they were very used to their guys that actually did the work in the fields. They were very used to once a day going around, unplugging the radios and plugging them back in. That's what they were used to.
And you said that LoRaWAN had too much of a noise.
LoRaWAN's not going to work for us because we move some real data. And my experience with LoRaWAN is it's a lot of lower bandwidth type stuff. I mean, we actually have streaming video. There's a number of sites. I'm not going to tell you what we watch, but we watch stuff in real time that are out on pads. So
did you look at TV white space?
I'm sorry, what was that one?
Did you look at TV white space?
That one we did not even look at.
The network, I think we just talked about it. That was a big win. Yeah, the streaming, the video, that was the big driver for that, right? The IoT and the SCADA, pretty straightforward. The video and the video streaming, and for the security was a big piece. I came on board after that piece, and we started looking at the SCADA system. We did some user load testing, some tuning, some store and forward testing. What happened was one of the top 3 integrators that is here in town was doing the Ignition piece. And I came in and said, well, let's see how this thing works. And we found out. As we kind of got down the road, they're still running their clear SCADA system and doing their alarms and running their day-to-day business, the gas company. Everybody's like, oh, let's launch, let's just go. Let's launch dirty. It's okay. Okay. And we listened for a while, and we listened for a while. And okay, fine. We launched dirty. The good part of that is this is what their screen turned into, right? Oh, why do I still have Brian?
You launched dirty, we got Brian.
They got this. SCADA 101, right? Current data up on the top left, yesterday's data, and the bottom left, they're big. Everybody in oil and gas is big about yesterday's data, right? What was the flow yesterday? So I can compare it to today and kind of see what the heck is going on. Charts and graphs on the right. They love charts and graphs. If you click on any of those data points, it blocks some of them out. Some of the names, this happens to be one of the flares. You know the history for that tag, right? SCADA 101. You go up and click daily, you see the daily record. See what the heck is going on. That was good. That was a good part about going dirty. Then there were some parts that weren't so good. MQTT to move the tags back and forth didn't work. Just didn't work. They were stale, they were missing, they weren't there. Now we'll say that the people at SiriusLink, specifically Nate Davenport, who I deal with every day, and Arlen, who owns the place, they got on it. Hey, Nate, this doesn't work. Here's the use case. Here's what I need. Okay, it'll be in the nightly build tomorrow. Then it was in the next version. We did that for a little while. And I can sit here and tell you, as somebody who relies on that every day, it works now. So if you're thinking, oh, Bruce said MQTT was bad. No, it was. Now it's pretty good. It's pretty reliable. It does what I need it to do.
And now they can sell it more.
I wouldn't get up here and I wouldn't lie to you. If it was crap, I'd tell you it was crap. It was crap. It's pretty good now.
But it's good for them too, I think.
Yeah. And we have an ongoing conversation about here's the next thing I would like, right?
Are you using Mosquito or using something custom
For
MQTT?
so Cirrus Link makes the Chariot server.
Okay.
I've taken a 250 limited version of that and made an Ignition module distributor. Get to the picture in a
I
second.
didn't know if you were building your own Mosquito.
We have a lot of open source because especially Brian is really good at open source, but in the Ignition world, if you want to get support, you got to play the Ignition game. So you got to kind of run their modules. The next part of the journey that had to be fixed, false alarms. Well, there's nothing worse in SCADA than false alarms. You will lose your credibility instantly. They're like, yeah, this doesn't work. I'm not going to use this anymore. There was a mix of reasons, bad tags, bad setup. I won't go into the details. If you run into that one, you should just be thinking the alarms have to be good every time. We spent a fair amount of time on that. Pushing alarms out to your phone via text. We use a provider that starts with T and ends in O. You probably know. Had a lot of problems with whitelisting. A lot of problems. Still wrestling with that one a little bit. That one doesn't go away.
There's 1-for-1 replacements that don't have that problem.
It wasn't my choice, but it's the one we're using,
Yeah.
and it's okay. We're still wrestling through it from time to time. It's been pretty solid after the setup. Ignition is a development platform. If you leave with nothing here today, walk out saying, if I want to do Ignition, I need Ignition developers. It's all custom code. They call it bindings, they call it scripts, they call it all kinds of stuff. It's all coding. If you log into the thing, other than adding a user and looking at a screen, it's all code under the covers.
Is it, what kind of code is
It ranges from their expression language to Python, pseudo to other stuff. And then they have these things called bindings where you basically can do transforms and I'll get to that in a second. And then a tricky one I ran into as we were coming back out of this doldrum. Our edge gateways, we'd have 22 devices on there. And all of a sudden, 20 were working and the other 2 wouldn't pull. No reason, nothing in the logs, nothing going on. Get everybody on the phone, everybody points fingers at everybody else. It turned out to be that they'd set up the license wrong at Ignition. Because the edge ships with 2 devices. And they do it, oh, well, 20 plus 2, right? No. 22. Put 22 in the license. That's a key tip. Weeks on that one. Because we're finding that most people run edge with 2 devices and a lot of sensors. We run edge with 50 devices. We're a little different. All right, let me jump over here. Back to the tech. So what did we learn about the tech? The Ignition learning curve is steeper than it should be. I've worked with a lot of technology in all different pieces and parts. We've talked about some of it in the past. It's in different places. It's not one IDK. It's you'll see if you ever give it a go. It's like, where is this? Where is this? Why is this over here? It's a lot of that. The next thing you're going to run smack into is there's this thing called the Ignition framework, which is nothing other than here's a best use document. Here's the best way to use Ignition. Here's how to set up the templates, and here's how to use tags, and here's how to do dynamic pages. It's great. You download it from the forum. Their sales engineers built it. It's not documented. And if you call Ignition support, they'll say, we don't officially support that. But you're going to have to use it. It's very handy.
So the community supported, wink, right?
The forum is pretty good. The Ignition forum is pretty good, and they have the real developers on there. It's not just everybody else winging it. But it's not as fast as straight support. And then with straight support, you're going to get the new guy, the manager, and then the wizard, right? Yes, sir.
I'm not familiar with Ignition at all. Is it well used in oil and gas or SCADA? Or
It is the 800-pound gorilla of SCADA. If you go look up what are SCADA
if I were
systems,
coming right out of college, looking for some way way to make my mark in life, I might want to look at being a ignition expert.
They have a certification process, and a lot of the consulting services out there, their model is come in, get them certified, get them out billing. And I can, there are certainly other things out there. We just ran into GEI Fix at another customer, which is, I consider, an old system. But if you go search SCADA, you're going to run straight into inductive ignition.
Bruce, do you have any feel for guess as to why this happened? Were they built through 500 acquisitions from 500 different companies with different modules? I mean, it sounds like they have no plan for their software.
They have a plan. Their plan is a lot of, oh, you want to talk to this device, which may be in a plant floor, maybe in oil and gas, maybe someplace else. They're trying to be all SCADA to all things. I like what they're doing. Don't get me wrong. I'm just telling you the real world of trying to implement this thing versus implement something else.
Do they not have like a library of devices, history on the devices?
So I just went to set up a Click PLC yesterday from a company called Automation Direct, just a little box like this to read some voltage from a solar panel. And I said, hey, where's your ignition setup? Where's your, it's basically you configure the device on the screen.
What's that?
And there's a little UDT on how to read stuff. No, they have a lot of panel pieces. If you have old panel equipment, the old remote panel stuff, they want to see that panel here. But yeah, it's not plug and play. You don't drag it over and go, oh, device. No, not quite there. It could be. And I'm pushing SeriousLink to go there. Hey, script all this so I can just build a template and say add.
Or, you know, it's an opportunity, right?
Yeah, well, I'm getting them to do it, but I'm with you. Yeah. So what's the long and the short of that one? Support contract with Ignition is required. Support contract with SeriousLink is required. It comes with the licensing, so it's not too bad. False alarms come from several places. We kind of touched on this already. Tags could be bad. Somebody could have set it up wrong. Could be in this what's called an alarm pipeline. You know, once the alarm goes off, what do you do with it? All those kinds of things. Bad alarms, they just kill you. You'll just die instantaneously. I talked about on here. MQTT, we talked about MQTT. It works. Here's the top tip. If you're setting up tags on the main gateway, they're what's called reference tags that point to the MQTT engine. If you don't do that, if you set up a regular tag, then the next time you restart an MQTT engine, all your tags are gone. It's all in the documentation. So they'll tell you don't do that. And we didn't do it, but a lot of people have. So just take that one as a tip. Oh yeah, Bruce said, let me go look this one up. There's something about that MQTT engine. We have lots of conversations about the edge boxes, the edge gateways. How many devices can we hang on there? So I called SeriousLink and said, hey, how many boxes can I hang on here? How many ABBs can go on this edge gateway? He said, how many got it? I said, I got 50 and I'm putting on 25 more. They said, oh, we've only tested 40 in the lab. So okay, so we're on the bleeding edge. Okay. Fine. So far, so good. All I can tell you there is really more RAM. It's not CPU intensive. It's all RAM intensive. The JVM cache has a bunch of stuff. Yeah. Turn the JVM up, put in half the RAM, go. The only other bottleneck I've run into is on the store and forward for MQTT. If you pick the disk one, right now I can only do 2 million tag transactions. They're actually getting rid of that. But right now, the version I have, if your tag changed 2 million times in whatever time things were down, that's it. It's all it'll save up to sync up. A good limit to know about. Okay. You guys see the whole screen? I need to get my sharing box, don't you?
So do you get false positive alarms as well?
Not anymore. You set a delay in ignition. As part of the kind of information architecture, you say, wait 5 seconds, wait 60 seconds before you recognize this as actually being a low or a low. Works pretty well. Works pretty well. The biggest part.
Is this the first time you did an ignition project?
Yes. Yes. I came to this one with a can you help? Sure. And then I realized, oh, okay, this is what they're doing. This is how it works. Here's kind of the best case. Here's the use case.
The next one you'll do will be much better.
The next one I've already been pulled into is GEI Fix, but they want to go do models and TIPCO Spotfire, but I get there. We get there in a second. Yeah.
Sorry,
No, it's okay.
sorry.
The information architecture for Ignition is critical. You're going to hear this term called UDTs. UDTs are templates made up of tags. Think of it as, I want to build a flare. It's got all these tags that go with it. Let me just put that in a template. They're great, but they're highly abused. So take a look at those. I've got a slide here at the end. If anybody wants to go into detail, we can kind of talk about that. And with me, the UI is key, right? They want the big picture. They want charts. You know, they
So
want
is
to,
it a custom UI or did you, is that, ignition system?
you go,
UI?
the Ignition comes with something called Perspective, which is their screen builder. It's Java flexible containers and all those kinds of things. It's super embedded. It's a good word. It's not as intuitive as I would like for a screen builder. But this is an overview screen for something we built for them for their entire field. I know it's a little small. And I've blanked out some of the names and the values too. But this didn't exist. The compressor parts in the top right tell you if the compressor is, tells you the fault state, tells you the RPMs. And what I have to say about this is what they have up on the screen in their office. So we went from basic site screens to this. And if you go down this road, there's a standard in this space for how to build screens. You can go read the standard. Some of you probably already know it. Basically, bottom lines to color for any problem, gray for everything else. That's the design standard. And I'll stop here. Am I talking too fast? Any questions? Anything we can talk about? I'll keep going. So I got the speaker boots here. Okay.
Yeah, so the edge devices is just like an x86 with like 16 gig of RAM or something, or more.
We're actually having this conversation right now. So it's an i3 with the biggest one's got 64 gig of RAM. And some solid state disk. That's way too much, but we use it.
It's kind of a big edge, but okay.
We over-designed it all because we knew once it got going. The JVM caches a lot of things, and the garbage collection doesn't really solve the problem.
But that's gonna be your scaling limit. The amount of RAM that you can put on that server.
The conversation I'm having with Cirrus Link is, all right, I can put RAM on all day. Which thread is going to get me?
Oh,
Is there some store and forward thing that's going to,
I figured that's the amount of days.
Yeah. I'm actually thinking of switching the disk just so if it gets turned off, I'll still have it or have some of it.
So you have to do it off RAM and cache.
You click a box and it does it.
Okay.
That one's pretty good. Oh, I'm switching disk. Okay. Nate, can I switch back without much problem? Yes. Okay. Great. How do I know?
So now you have to have error detection to do that. Right, you have to.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of don't change too many variables at once.
Yeah. No.
So I tend to kind of, okay, and there's upgrades and things always going on too.
Are you sure this passes the spell test? I mean, how many tags are you collecting and what's the frequency of acquisition?
The polling times range from 10 to 30 to 10 minutes. They vary based on the tag. I set the standards for the polling time, so
The tag is like a 64-bit value, like a floating point number, or let's say.
they're in.
Those are just numbers, right?
It's either in 16 or a float. Yeah.
Okay, then how do you get to 64 gigabytes of RAM?
Because the JVM itself is running more than just the tags. It's running the virtual machine. It's running on the edge. It's running the local perspective, which does the local windowing, I'm logging into the web there. It's also handling a bunch of the MQTT stuff. It's handling everything that's running on the edge.
I mean, Mosquito runs it. Like,
He's not using Mosquito though.
no, I know, but he's using some of the MQTT implementation Java.
Yeah.
It has to be small too.
Yeah.
Probably not as small as Mosquito.
But I also have Edge Historian running. I also have Edge WebView running. So I'm doing history on the edge. I'm doing alarms on the edge. The edge has to be completely standalone. So everything's running.
Are you sure they just haven't figured out a free memory and
their general applications.
Yeah.
The garbage collection is an issue, and you have to tune it up to a larger garbage
So
collection.
are you sending all your edge historian data to the central historian server?
Yes.
Are you doing it, real time, or are you doing it, in batch modes, all hours?
MQTT gets to pick, but it's basically real time. Yeah, unless the link's down and then it stores and forwards.
Well, so following up on that question, do you, offload that off the RAM?
It's sorry, but it doesn't need to be on
Oh, Ignition doesn't give me a choice.
the RAM.
Yeah, Ignition's kind of take it or leave it. Here it is. Here's the web screen to configure it. You pick the MQTT module, which is now inside Ignition and running inside the JVM.
The historian data really shouldn't reside on RAM. It's not on a hard drive.
The historian data goes to disk. The store and forward history. It's not even history.
It doesn't,
Cache.
it doesn't call it dynamically when it sends it.
Doesn't call it dynamically when it sends it.
So how-
It does both, actually. Yeah. Remember the old Sun FIFO thing? Yeah. Biofed. Anyway, sorry. This picture is, hey, I'm an architect. What did Bruce talk about? What kind of the limits of running Ignition? That's what this is. We've talked about some of these, the licensing at the edge, more RAM, store and forward. I'll talk about down at the end where it says tag quality auto monitoring. So if you're in this business and you set up a bunch of tags, there's some that you really care about. And you would like to know if those tags are gone, stale, something's wrong, any status other than good, right? Ignition doesn't have that out of the box. You're gonna have to try to figure that one out. That's a tricky one. The other one is when you go to use Perspective to build those screens down the bottom, it's okay. If you ever build web screens, you're gonna be disappointed. And if you go to do a stack bar chart, you're gonna be really disappointed. Now, there are other packages you can go and load on. That's just a tip. This slide is come back to this one if you're an architect and you're thinking to the limits of what we talked about today.
Totally get away from their GUI. You can grab the data.
Yeah, until you do the alarm pipeline and a couple other things, but yeah.
But for simple things, it shouldn't be.
Definitely possible when you look at the licensing costs. Unless you're gonna go open source,
Yeah.
kind of hard to justify, so.
Well, the open source dashboard and stuff, so
I agree, the person who made the call,
the Grafana
Gotta make the
stuff
call,
is like
yeah.
off the shelf great.
it's like, we want to be all Ignition, okay. Until we hit 250 devices, okay.
No, I mean, I understand that.
After that, would I say, hey, go create web screens and that for something else? No, I would not. Okay, the next one. So this is a budget thing. This is not a tech thing. So we're budgeting the next one. What are we talking about? And I'm going to go ahead and talk about this, Brian, since I have it up here on the slide. For the network, pick a supply chain with a complete line of equipment. We got into a lot of, oh, I just need a 5-port. They don't have it, or it's not available. I'll go get one from China. Now you have a whole different management infrastructure, right? Don't do that. Yeah.
So is it possible to get? Is that achievable?
That's a good question, Brian. Is that achievable?
That's a real good question. I don't believe that you can get it in one vendor because we have such a wide spread, right? We have more data center type stuff in some of our key towers, but yet, like you said, we need a little 5-port, C1D2 devices that are sitting next to a flare stack. And I don't see it. I mean, yeah, you can go into Red Lion and some of those for that type of equipment, but then when you try to go back the other way to a 2448 type port switch, you run into some problems. So I don't think you can go completely one vendor. At least I haven't found the vendor yet. I will share a warning though, and Bruce touched on it briefly about the going to China. There's a number of companies, Bruce mentioned one of them already, that will sell you a switch that meets all the wonderful C1 D2 requirements. It's hardened and everything else. The problem is they went to China with a design spec. They bought 1,000, 10,000, whatever, and they had a firmware design on it that has ancient SSH that's highly vulnerable. Telnet's a joke. Their web interface can be cracked in a matter of minutes, and they're the ones that paid for the firmware, so there are no updates. So you do need to be careful on some of those little bitty managed switches that you get. Who's really making them? Because you may not be happy with the result.
Brian, can I put you on the spot and say, who would you pick next time? You can.
I honestly, I'm happy with this one. I would probably redeploy. Depending on some situations, I would probably redeploy with Cambian and Moxa. Moxa would be my small box for the 5 and 8 port solutions. Yeah, that's what I would do, because I haven't been able to crack a Moxa box. I cracked an automation box because the documentation was wrong. I cracked into that thing through common security cracks in under 5 minutes, and I wasn't using the serial console port.
Straight from the guy. The labor budget, especially for Ignition, 3x. I know the 3 is not up there, and that's on purpose. I'm protecting some people. 3 times. Just put 3x on your labor budget for that. You're going to need developers. Licensing is a huge part of this. I know the exact number. Sorry, I can't say. As soon as you cross 250 devices, you've got an MQTT conversation to have. You're going to have to switch to a Chariot server of your choice and deal with all the issues that go along with that. We'd already talked Ignition Edge. We talked about the whole 2022 thing. When you go past 2 devices, they charge you a ton of money. Be ready and tell them no. Say, no, I want to work out some kind of deal where I can do, 50 devices. It's doable. They'll work with you. It's not the end of the world. I'm not bad mouthing Ignition anyway. I'm just saying there's something to go take and talk to them about. They work with us. I appreciate what they do. We brought in a top 3 integrator. I came in, I had to, take over. Next time, basic test plan for Milestone. I know it's, that's the basics. Sounds like one-on-one stuff. It is. It wasn't there. It needs to be there next time.
And use a top 3 integrator?
Yeah.
Like an Accenture or a...
No, a top 3 Ignition integrator.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they also sell panels and a bunch of other stuff. They're around here. I'm not going to name names. And the ones that are not on this list are anomaly detection and modeling, right? Doing something with that SCADA data other than alarms and the basics. That'd be the other things I would put on the budget for the next time. And then this is mine. Sorry, I'm an old product manager. And I know we're all techies, so am I. Avoid the tech trap. Keep asking them, what business questions you need answered? What screens do you live in every day, right? Simple. Go ask the user, because they'll tell you, right? These are oil and gas folks. They'll tell you. It's not a big problem. And that's it. Happy to answer any questions, especially while Brian's online.
Well, we're a quiet bunch.
I've been here before.
It's a lot of the issues that we face in product, those are things that we come up against is you get a particular solution set, and 3 years down the road, your maintenance needs to be renewed and it goes up by 2 or 3 times, or you've got all these things looking out there. So it's not my question, but it's obviously things you need to anticipate because they happen.
The licensing is not small. It's a big number. We pay for support. The maintenance is the standard percentage you see for maintenance. I use the support, so I'm okay with that. My go-to move is I don't want to bill people hours when I can get support to wrestle through it, and then I'll figure out the last mile.
The first, the thing, big numbers is subjective, right?
Yeah, okay. I can't say. It's it's more than 10 and less than a million. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I was at Capgemini, we did just these.
Not Capgemini money.
With
Yeah.
SAP's, there was $3 million for their SAP. So.
No, it's not SAP money. But for what it is, it's money. It's SCADA, right?
Yeah, it's not cheap.
It's not as if
Yeah. We're not talking about ERP implementation and a bunch of stuff.
That was $10 million.
So this was just a small, I'm gonna say small, relatively small oil and gas firm, locally owned, had their own homegrown system, you said?
They use Clear SCADA, which was an old product, kind of a Windows 95 in somebody's garage, no joke kind of product.
And so from a business standpoint, then, how did they find you, or how did you find them? And what was we use the term burning platform, right, in industry, especially software. What was the burning platform? They were about to run out of space, or they had no idea how much oil and gas they were pumping, and had to report it. But sorry, let me go back to my first question.
Sure.
So how they find you? How did you find them?
Yeah, no, it goes back to the why we talked at the beginning. How do they find us? I have a friend I worked at AMD with who knew them. So everything in oil and gas is who do you know?
Okay.
Sorry.
Oh, fair enough. Yeah.
I don't believe in that system, but that's the way it works. It's who do you know? And they knew this person and they brought me in because hey, I'm up to my, up to here. I need some help. Okay, great. Happy to help. It really was. It shouldn't take me 30 minutes to get an answer on what's flowing and what's going on out there from my old system, literally sitting in somebody's garage. And I want to do video, and I know I can't because I've got security. We're doing video for security, right? Okay, well, what are you going to do? Well, if I'm going to touch, you got to touch the network. Okay, how about the SCADA system? What are we talking? What's the big round numbers? It's less than 3 million, obviously, but actually with labor and everything else, interesting conversation.
Now that you've built this network, though, have you started having discussions about what other data sensors, what other things it can grow to? Because you've got a reliable pipeline.
Brian, you or me? I'll go.
Yeah, go ahead.
The conversation is basically, the interesting question I got asked the other day was, hey, we got this other ignition system. That's one of the other systems that's running the oil company. So we're the gas company, the oil company's got ignition also. We didn't get to see it before we started. We just kind of found out. And said, hey, can we just pick up their project and put on ignition? It's all ignition, right? No, not exactly. It's not exactly how it works. It's a good idea, though. Let's talk about that. We have more ABBs coming. That's pretty much the bread and butter of this business. We need a gas meter, good gas meter and analysis. We got more PLCs. I've heard cameras. Brian, have you heard anything else?
Yeah, the cameras are probably going to be the big one because in a number of cases, we have to have video audits of activity. So we're pushing a lot more cameras than we were even originally designed for. The beauty is we just add a couple of extra radios and some key spots, and we don't have problems. We can scale it quite easily.
Do you have to do any remote DVRs if you start adding too many cameras?
We haven't got to that level yet, but yeah, if we need to, we have our DVR system already will support remote DVRs and bringing that back up to the master in a controlled way.
What about site security? Are you going or hearing any discussions about adding things like presence detection and so forth?
The presence detection is part of it. We've already started implementing that on a couple of specific sites. We've got a new well going in, and there's a lot of presence security and monitoring that we have to do there. There's also another one where it's a dump station, pickup station. Heck, I don't know. I move packets, man. That's what I do. But I can tell you, I've seen big trucks roll up. They pull out hoses, they hook up, and stuff flows into the truck. And there is monitoring, and there's alarms that go off so that if something happens outside of a given timeline, someone gets that call, they get that notice, hey, what's going on out there?
Which DVR system are you using? Or which camera?
The cameras are a number of different ones. We've worked with some Bosch. We've worked with some Amcrest. I will tell you that the pan-tilt zoom Bosches, compared to some of the much cheaper Amcrest cameras, which are rebranded China stuff, with some American support, the Bosch, I mean, they're sad. They're overpriced piles of garbage. I'll tell you how I really feel.
On the NVR side.
On the DVR side, we use oh heck, now I can't. It escapes me, and I can't even get into it because it's on my other computer. I'm sorry, I'm being elusive there, but I honestly don't remember the name of the DVR software. No, it is not Blue Iris. We did not go with any of the big name ones. We went with a small. It is a licensed product, but we went with a small system.
So are you worried if you're using a Chinese rebranded about the embedded firmware?
No, because of the way that I monitor things and the way that I control things. If you get into certain aspects, if you're a device and you get into a part of my network that is a high security part of the network, if you squeak the wrong way, I know about it. And so, no, I'm not really worried about the Chinese firmware stuff, because if it does happen, I'll pick it up. And we will take a hammer to that very quickly and make it go away.
What firmware rate are you using on the video?
What firmware am I using where?
Frame rate.
Oh, frame rate. We keep the frame rates low on a lot of our stuff, down around 10 to 15. We're not trying to watch a movie here. We don't need 30 frames per second.
Are you doing computer vision as well?
I'm sorry, what about as well?
Are you doing computer vision as well?
No, we're not doing computer vision.
You're not trying to detect remotely. Okay.
No, we do have zones. We have ranges that when we get movement in there, we're picking that up and we're triggering off that. But we're not going any more advanced with that.
So just changing topics just a little bit. I mean, you guys went down the cellular. I'm assuming you looked at CBRS and some of the free to use. How do you compare? I know when we deal with cell phone companies, one of the biggest challenges is coverage. You guys were talking about being oversubscribed or saturated, but in a lot of cases, you just have problems even getting signals out to those remote areas. You guys can deploy your own. How fast compared to like deploying a cell or getting with the cellular company to get coverage enhanced? You guys control your own destiny. How fast can you control your own destiny?
We can turn up the same day as long as we have a tower in place. So if it's a pad site and it's within our planned coverage area, then we have a tower that will cover that.
Okay, so you're doing point to point, not point to multipoint.
We do point to point between the towers, and then we do point to multi-point out to the individual pads.
Okay.
So as long as it's within that, as long as it's within like the circle, the umbrella of one of our towers, I mean, it's a same day turn up if we need to, which we've had a few like that. But when we're expanding out farther, then there is that time, that construction time of getting a tower up. How long does that take? And I Bruce was talking about labor. I got to stress, when you start bringing in guys that are climbing towers, bring in guys that A, they're professional tower climbers, and B, they're professional with actual network and radio gear. We did not, as in I did not, but the guys that were climbing those towers that had license, they had insurance. I've never seen anyone destroy a network port like that, but they did it on twice. So make sure you're working with some good guys.
Otherwise, have you done any portable or mobile towers?
No, we have not. We've not. Fortunately, we can plan a little bit more than that, so we don't. We haven't had the need for any portable towers yet.
Were they existing towers, or did you have to build the towers?
These are build our own towers. Yeah, we don't rent space on anybody else's towers. We literally control our own destiny.
You guys contracted for that. Who did you use for the tower company?
That would be outside of my pay grade. I have a guy that I call and I say, hey, we need this, and he goes and makes it happen.
Okay.
And the guy that works there brought in his,
Yeah.
he brought in his friends first, and that didn't go too well. And then he brought
Good tower company in Irving, Solaris.
Yeah.
Solaris.
I'd have to call him and ask him.
He's the guy down in San Angelo.
Yeah, send him to me.
Yeah.
I
Now I will tell you, there is a guy that one of the field hands in Midland, he said, hey, I've got a buddy. You know how this always starts. I've got a buddy. But this buddy, this guy turned out to be a pro tower climber. He was actually starting his own tower climbing company. And we used him to finish off the project because the subcontractor of the contractor who was deploying all the tower equipment for us, they were just idiots. So this young man starting his own company, he ended up bringing the job across the finish line.
The problem is there's real short tower climbers.
Oh, yeah.
And secondly,
especially in Midland.
Yeah.
And secondly, there's a lot of so the higher your IQ, the less you want to do that job.
And if you do drug testing, you'll.
Oh yeah, drug testing kills.
90% of it.
Yeah.
Really high intelligence.
Yeah. There's all the fun design things, like when this falls over, nothing could be in the radius, right?
Yeah.
Like, why is the mobile, why is that sitting there?
Yeah.
Now, you have to understand, these people, when they put up a well, you're talking 50 containers in a giant rig. So they're used to moving equipment around, right?
Yeah.
Just finding somebody good who can do it.
There's some really nice hydraulic towers, the ones that the telescope up that actually have a portable base.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, send it to me.
How tall are these towers typically? Great question. That's
How old is it now, Brian?
I think the tallest one we have is 100 feet. We're able to strategically put, because believe it or not, in Midland, there are hills. I'm down in Houston. We just have flat land, but in Midland, there are some actual hills. And so a lot of our towers are sitting on hills. So we don't have to get that high.
So by the way, the towers you put up, have you thought about renting out space on the towers that you put up? For like a Wisp or somebody like that?
I'm going to be objection. I will object to that because I don't want other people monkeying around on our towers. But at the end of the day, it's not my job, or it's not my call. At the end of the day, the towers belong to the client. If the client wants to turn that into a revenue source, then they will. And then I'll make extra money because I'll be fixing things when other people break it. So
That's a good one.
yeah.
In fact. But,
So 100-foot towers.
yeah.
All right, any last burning questions?
So now that you've successfully done this, and there are a jillion little small oil and gas companies out in West Texas, have you started calling on all the other ones and said, hey, we're really smart, we know how to do this?
Already at the next one. But they're not doing ignition. They want to do modeling. So that's a little different view. It's a typical spot fire power station.
All right, Brian?
Thanks, guys.